Whenever a theft event occurs and they come to us and say, hey, like I was compromised, it's us trying to decipher, okay, were you actually compromised, or are you using that as a cop out because you actually committed this theft? We just observe so many different parameters, but in terms of having visibility into that inbox, it's impossible. You can't do it. They're evolving to try to figure out what data are third parties observing. What are they taking? How are they getting it? And what can we do to get around that?
There are bad actors that are paying carriers to click a phishing link and say, all you have to do is tell Highway you got hacked or phished and I'll split it with you.
And that's why we've seen more broker attacks over the last month or so. We're looking at all activity through our platform. That goes to say that we're also protecting the carriers from that too. That's probably the most frustrating part, is just observing that and trying to figure out how to mitigate it.
We have the Q3 freight fraud trends. Highway always does a great job reporting on what's happening quarterly. And this upcoming Monday, the 27th, you're actually releasing a whole PDF on what's happening, which I think is going to be great just to get an insight into what's actually evolving in this industry. So Michael and Demi, thanks for joining us today. What will we be talking about today specifically?
I would say like framing the issue, like freight industry wide, just seeing a surge in coordinated fraud activity. And it's not just about stolen identities or false documents anymore. I feel like it used to be. And like, we just see a lot of shifts in that as we move through, Q3, Q4, and bad actors are just becoming more sophisticated, targeting vulnerabilities and like physical driver operations and digital broker systems, third-party platform spaces. I think that the current landscape is shifting risk more downstream lately, and just from carriers being the primary target to brokers and digital intermediaries becoming the focal point really quickly. I think that that's just like a really good way to frame like what we're seeing in this freight fraud trend, as well as like what we're seeing industry wide. And just something that I think is important to maybe mention to this group, and just tell you what we're seeing on a broker, carrier, and a third party level. I think that it's just kind of running rampant.
I was just going to say, Caney, Caney and Demi, you guys have. I mean, it's pretty cool that you do this sort of stuff, release this data, because I feel like you guys probably have the best look at this data, maybe of anyone really. So it's obviously useful information for the entire market to know. So it's cool to see you guys do this. I think it's a really good idea.
I think the other thing that it's important to communicate that at kind of the time that we live in now is sometimes I'll get questions, typically from somebody that wants to poke me, like, I thought you guys solved this problem. And fraud is never something that's going to be solved past tense in freight. And so that's the big, there were things that we did solve and have been solved, and it's very hard to overcome. And Demi can talk about, she sees more of this data than anybody in Highway. That's the first caution. And then the second caution I would give is there are a lot of people that want to sell a product. And so they have like the answer. There's not like a product singular that's like, now this is the answer. And the reason I say that is not from like a competitive position. It's just like, it's irresponsible. Because every time we have a product that solves a problem, we have to go build another one because the vector shifts. And so,
yeah, I mean, does that just speak to like the actors involved in this, and they're just like the incentive they have to continue to find new ways to attack the system? Like, just they have so much to gain from the attack that anything that quote unquote solves an angle or a vector just presents new and creative ways for them to continue doing what they're doing.
Yeah. And I would boil it to, or I'd summarize it as just like the need to look credible. And so like, look, we early in the early days of Highway, we way over indexed on how much the ELD would solve. Is that fair, Demi? And then we got into it. We were like, holy cow, like they spoofed this stuff too. I mean, we have our ELD blacklist is bigger than the one the FMCSA puts out.
Mm-hmm.
I would just tell you this, like a carrier will take what someone does with any platform and say, okay, how do we pass whatever we've figured out that they do, right? So you can run a truck around, you can run 5 trucks around, you can connect those to an ELD. Hell, you can have pictures of those trucks, but you then don't know who's controlling the truck, who's dispatching it, if something's changed, who's driving it. So what we fight constantly is, where is the threat coming from? Is it a literal physical direct theft, which is where we'd kind of like to push the world to, because that's a little more vanilla? Or is there something changing in the digital nature of the motor carrier that's a threat? Because sometimes they will get a hold of a carrier's digital their inbox, like some way. And so their trucks are running around legally with fine drivers, but now the bad actor has enough information to intercept, steal, whatever they can do to get a hold of a load.
Yeah.
Today's podcast is also brought to you by FreightFlex. Ready to take control of your future? Freight agencies are everywhere, but how do you pick the right one? At FreightFlex, we're proud to offer the #1 freight agent program in the nation, backed by an unmatched tech stack and a world-class support team. It's time to ditch the corporate grind and build your own freight agency powerhouse. Take charge, earn what you're worth. Contact us today for a tech demo and see why FreightFlex is where business owners are built. I'm curious, since you're doing these quarterly reports, what are the changes that you've seen happen, like from Q2 and then like year over year? What are like the major changes that have occurred?
I would say it boils down to like internet hygiene. As carriers get better at securing their own data, because they were kind of the target of so many different attack vectors in terms of their email inboxes getting hacked, giving, phishing attempts and them falling for that. I think that now that they're getting so many notifications thrown at them and they kind of see how this is playing out, I think that brokers maybe have become the new target for fraud networks in some capacity. I think that just, quarter to quarter, I think that bad actors are kind of securing, wherever they can get into and where they find it's easiest. And what I would say is like, don't be a sitting duck. Don't be an easy target. Like as a broker and as a carrier, even though you have what you think are really secured networks, like enable two-factor authentication, put something in there, some sort of safety net for you. So if you move into a really bad area where there's break-ins happening every single day, don't leave your front door unlocked and open, and I think that that's kind of the message that I would like to send just in trends that I've seen over the last, even 6 months. And bad actors are observing new data patterns all the time. They're monitoring which carriers brokers engage with, shipment types, communications. They map out opportunities for theft, at a really highly sophisticated level. So compromised email accounts, shared login credentials, session hijacking with, dispatch services and things like that. I think that this industry still operates they're too trusting in terms of who they work with and who they give their data to. So I would just say like internet hygiene for brokers should now be treated like physical cargo security, just like it is for a carrier side as well. That would be kind of the shift that I've seen, over the last 6 months, even has gone really, really big uptick in terms of that.
With how I don't know what the numbers are, but I would probably wager that like over 75% of just like MCs are registered with like a Gmail or like a non-custom domain, right? And I think that not that there's anything wrong with that per se, but I think it's just indicative of just the kind of state of your typical motor carrier, right? Where they're at from a tech standpoint, where they're at from just like, and I think that just like speaks to the difficulty of like really pushing that digital hygiene message out to the carrier marketplace, right? Like obviously it's incredibly important and they all need to be aware of how they're exposed to threats, right? And what they can do to mitigate those threats. But I mean, it's got to just be a really difficult needle to move, just at scale, across the entire landscape. And I imagine you guys are better positioned than anyone to be able to really send that message to them. And I'm sure you are to a degree, but it's got to be a challenge, right?
It is a challenge. And I think that the biggest challenge is that there's no way for us to have visibility into a carrier's inbox, and it's like whenever a theft event occurs or something within their MC and they come to us and say, hey, like I was compromised. Well, now it's us trying to decipher, okay, were you actually compromised or are you using that as a cop out because you actually committed this theft? And I think that we look into so many different patterns in terms of their digital footprint to see where they've moved. And I think that we just observe so many different parameters in terms of that. But in terms of having visibility into that inbox, it's like it's impossible. You can't do it. And I think that that's the biggest gap. And there's not a bridge to cover that. I think that we just kind of experience that on a day-to-day basis, and as well as in the broker side as well. We're seeing a lot of that. And that's probably the most frustrating part, is just observing that and trying to figure out how to mitigate it.
How much of this, like, Highway's been around for how long now? 4 or 5 years?
About three.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess I'm curious, like, since the beginning, how much of what you guys have done from like a product and like a risk mitigation standpoint did you really even think you would be doing when you set out to do all this?
We didn't think we'd be doing half of what we're doing today, man.
Yeah.
I mean, the goal, we set the infrastructure and kind of the cultural tenets to go here, like own outcomes, be responsive. Like, if it's an outcome we can own, we're not going to be the ones that are like, oh, you got to go get a different product for that. Or if it's something that we can figure out, we're going to own it. We're going to do it. But I didn't know we would have to get to the load level so quickly. I think the scariest thing that we have to think about now is the social engineering aspect. And Demi can talk about this, but I firmly believe 100% that there are bad actors that are paying carriers to click a phishing link and say, all you have to do is tell Highway you got hacked or phished and I'll split it with you. And I firmly believe this because Demi is working right now with a few brokers to figure out who the mole is in their organization, because we can watch certain users have major upticks in page views of certain carriers before they break bad.
Katie, do you mean split what? Split the
I'll give you a perfect example. I wish I had I thought about bringing the pictures, Demi, from team member number 1 the other day. So we record all of our calls. So the other thing I love is the anecdotes of the internet where like Highway doesn't pick up the phone. Okay, so I'm just going to curse and say bullshit, because like Demi's incentive is tracked to response time, and Demi always gets her bonus. So there you go. And we have a recording from faithful team member number 1 of someone calling and saying, hey, I need you to help me get access to certain things in Highway. How much do they pay you? I guarantee I can pay you more. We'll split the revenue. I'll split the profits of the stolen load. It's recorded, like in our call recording. And like the team member, it doesn't comply to it. And we get some really colorful language from, the bad actor. But they're doing it at freight brokers too, because we see page views of certain users at certain freight brokers grow, right, of certain carriers. And then all of a sudden those carriers are implicated in fraud. And it's like, wait a minute, why all of a sudden did this user and this broker suddenly look at these 5 carriers over and over and over a... So the problem
the implication is that those users are sharing the carrier data to the carrier themselves,
to the bad actor, or helping the bad actor comply. Or I mean, Demi can tell you more about what it is, but it's pretty.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like I think the data piece, and that's why we've seen more broker attacks over the last month or so. And I think that it's because they're evolving to try to figure out what data are third parties observing, like what are they taking, how are they getting it, and what can we do to get around that. And I think that they're trying to do it in phishing attempts. And I think they're trying to do it, just like Caney said, just with a mole in the system, and determining, the base risk assessment for that, even just looking through broker accounts. We're looking at all activity through our platform. And that goes to say that we're also protecting the carriers from that too. And I think that carriers should be just as, vigilant in who they book with as well, because it's on both fronts. And like what we want to do is make sure that it's secure for both entities, broker and carrier level. And I think seeing so much fraud kind of grow within that broker side has become a major concern for us and has made us tighten up our security measures immensely, just in terms of what we see for user activities.
I mean, there is such a strong incentive. I mean, they theoretically, a stolen load, whatever, it nets somebody in terms of, income, revenue, profit, whatever weird word you want to call it. I mean, and that incentive is so strong that they're willing to part ways with a substantial portion of it to make it happen, right? And if they find the right person in a company to play ball in that front, then like there's a lot of vectors there. Like each employee is a potential vector at a company. I mean, man, that's bottomless.
True. Well, and so what they do read too is what we're seeing now is they don't try to hit a broker over and over again. They move. And so it's the same thing that like Scott Cornell will talk about this when like he taught me about this actually when it comes to like paying off a guard or something when you're doing a direct theft. You only do it once or twice and you move around because that human like that's physically there that may be involved in helping with a direct theft, that morally they're like, I'm only going to compromise myself once and they feel okay. But the bad actor he's just got to find 30 of those people. And so so they have a playbook for this. So this is not new. They're just doing it digitally and via social engineering. So they're not going to call and try to do that to the same broker every single day. They're not going to try to compromise the same person all the time. They're going to try to compromise a person at a time and rotate so that the pattern is harder to detect.
Today's podcast is also brought to you by Augment. Freight has always rewarded hustle, but the AI era will reward leverage. Meet Augie, the AI teammate built for logistics by Augment. Augie automates the grind building, booking, tracking, collecting, so your team can focus on service and scale. Freight's AI evolution is already underway. Scale smarter with Augie. Learn more at goaugment.com. I'm wondering here, okay, is this what's happening where, like, let's say a bad actor is going to call a broker, and the broker basically is booking a load, the mole is booking the load under a different, let's just say some random MC that he just has approved in the system, but instead of sending that rate con to the actual carrier, he's just telling all the details to the bad actor? Is that what's happening? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's
so let's say secure rate con blocks the rate con. Right. So they
explain that a little bit. Secure rate con.
Okay. Yeah. That's a great question. So let's say someone is successful in that. They book a load under an MC. They talk to somebody. If the broker uses our rate con delivery product, that brokerage has decided that they do as a policy don't send documents insecurely. Right. And so what happens then is like we send the rate con and the authorized user at the motor carrier will get the, hey, click here to view your rate confirmation. And it's really fast. It's, instant with sign in with Highway because that token's already there. And so then the bad actor has to call in and go, hey, I don't have access to that inbox or I'm on the road and they have to get them to disclose the information from the load. Or for someone that's not using secure rate con, they just have to compromise the inbox and they just get it and the carrier doesn't know. Is that, Demi, did I answer that right? Is that how you're seeing that most of the time, or is there something else you want to add?
No, I think that's spot on in terms of what we see on a day-to-day around rate cons. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this is a trend that's been increasing this year, this quarter, or like, how do you think this has been happening for the last 3 years or so that we just haven't really picked up on it?
I would say it's something that's been happening, and it becomes so. It has become a new way, and it all goes back to this digital hygiene piece. I think that's just what we've seen it evolve into, and why we do what we do now. And I think that's just to mitigate the risk that we've seen, originate there from just compromised inboxes and things like that, pointing the finger at other entities. I think that's why we're where we're at.
I mean, I would say rate fraud related to like documents is not new.
Right.
It's just how they gain access to it. Like I remember when I was a broker, this is gotta be 15 years ago. Somebody took one of my rate confirmations and doctored them and were using them to like represent like with my name on them when I was at Bear. You can do it so much more now. The digital age is like we don't use fax machines, right? I mean, you can just do it faster.
I'm just curious from like the organized crime level, like most of these bad actors are part of an organized crime network. Is this how it works? And then like, I know we have some of the top countries involved. If we could kind of dig deeper into that, like what do these countries actually represent in terms of like the work? Is it like do you have like bad actors in the States, and then they have like dispatch offices in let's just say foreign countries that are helping them with all this? Like, because to steal the load, you actually need people in the States, unlike double brokering or scamming people over the phone. So I'm just wondering like how this all ties into like the top countries that are represented here. What are they doing involving all this?
I think it's a little bit of both. And I think that just to kind of give an idea here, there are valid companies that exist in those countries.
Of course,
yeah. That what we see a lot of when we see fraud come out of there is they do have a driver at the driver level. Sometimes is where that fraud is occurring, and not necessarily at a carrier company level. I think that you see it in both. And I think that they're feeding information back and forth to each other and makes it easier to steal the freight. And from these top countries, what we've seen and why these are top countries is we look at a remote address level in terms of what we see in theft. So when theft occurs, that's a parameter that we look really heavily into to see, okay, where did this originate? Where did this occur? Because you have carriers, drivers, dispatchers, all kind of pointing the finger at each other. And I think just taking all of it as just one big lump sum of all the remote addresses they're using and look at the comparison between the two. And I think that when you take other theft events and you see, okay, this also happened with the Serbia access point, and so did this one, and so did this one. I think that that's what we look at and what we compare that to when we get that top country list. We just see a lot of that fraud originate there. And then obviously they do have somebody here in the States that they interact with, whether it's on a driver level or carrier company level, to execute that fraud and steal freight.
It's time for me to go back to Serbia and do some better digging.
Oh yeah, for sure. I bet you'd find some things there.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, I was a carrier rep from 2016 until 2021. And I don't even know if I ever once even thought about a load getting stolen. Like, yeah. It was never like it never happened to me. And two, it was just not even on my radar at all. Sure, we had certain, customers that had targeted commodities, right? Like energy drinks or electronics or insert here. Metals. And we had, SOPs for handling, you have to park in this area. You have to tell us where you're going to stop. If it's going to drop in a yard, you have to let us know where it is and is the yard secure, yada, yada. But like beyond that, it was just not, it wasn't really a thing that I ever thought about. And so it's like, it's just crazy the extent to which it's taken off. And I'm just like, what is the simplest reason for why it's become such a thing over the last couple of years? I'm just curious what you guys think.
I think it might be political, but.
Well, this is the way that we talk about it is fraud needs three things. It needs the prospect of gain, needs anonymity, and it needs urgency. And the prospect of gain in cargo theft is incredible, because when you look at like legal enforcement, there's not really any downside to stealing a load or 20 of them, And so the prospect of gain is very, very high. Before highway, anonymity was incredibly easy. Paul, Reed, is there any more urgent place than a brokerage floor?
No.
And so when that's why you don't see a lot of freight getting stolen that are regular contracted carriers. Like, Paul, when was the last time you heard a story that was like, hey, this is one of our regular lanes that we move 10 times a day with the same 5 regular carriers and they stole it? Like, when did you hear that story? We don't hear it, do we, Demi? Like, oh, this regular carrier that moves my contracted load every day suddenly stole it. So they're always exploiting the urgency of the spot or the load that's not covered. And so it's those three things. And so you have to live in those three places and solve those problems.
But it's what's interesting to me. I mean, when the market was hot and everyone was running all over the place trying to get loads covered, and there were all these new carriers popping up, and that makes a lot of sense. But in the last couple of years, as the market's been really low and bad, I mean, sure, that might create a stronger incentive for the bad actors to jump in and start doing this sort of stuff, because maybe they were making good money before and they didn't need to get involved in, shady stuff. But like from the broker's perspective, isn't that the perfect opportunity to, when the market is low, to try to focus in on finding those regular carriers to haul loads for you when they don't have as many options? Isn't that like the perfect time to focus on that? Like, Reed, why is that?
When did you first get into brokerage, Reed?
2016.
Where'd you work?
Echo.
Yeah. So in 2016, and I'm going to sound like the old man, like back in my brokerage day, but the method of finding capacity was still about building a carrier base, about building networks. So when do you think about how many thousands of brokers were hired during the boom, that like they don't think about building capacity? Like their methodology is post it and just keep raising the rate until they get a call.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the days of like, we talk about stripping zips, like every broker I worked in, you had to earn access to a load posting tool.
Yeah.
Was that the same way to Echo, Reed? Like you had to earn it, right? You had to book.
I didn't get access for like 3 or 4 years, I don't think.
Yeah, because like, hey, here's your list, or hey, here's your region, or hey, get on 411 and strip zips, right? And so until you have so many carriers in your reserve, or until you're booking, 5 loads a day, like that's how that was the mentality. And then a posting resource was your last resort.
Yeah,
like it was a tool, not the tool. And so now, like, and this is part of what we're seeing with the exchange. It's like we're having to train brokers how to book freight in some instances. Now you have some brokers that get it. Like I had a business come to me at the F3 conference yesterday. Decent little broker, like 30 million in revenue, maybe 25, I think they told me. And they do mostly like high value freight, government, DOD. They do not post loads anymore. And they source all of their capacity through our lane certainty tool in TFX, because that's how they think about the world. Like they can't with the type of freight that they move. But it's a paradigm shift. It's like, how do you go back to the way that brokerage was supposed to be in an automated world? Because I think, Reed, we automated the wrong things.
Yeah.
Like we automated postings, and we automated screen scraping trucks that were posted. Like we made everything about what's posted. It was the wrong thing to automate.
I mean, and the best carriers never posted their trucks either. You know what I mean? Like, or they didn't. That wasn't their method of first resort, right?
Did any of your regulars ever call you and go, Reed, why'd you post that load, dude? That's my load.
Every day.
And you're like, bro, sorry, I should have called you first. Yeah. Right? Like, like that's how brokerage works. Like, I can't tell you like how many times, like if somebody accidentally like didn't unclick the auto post from our TMS, I'd get a call and be like, why are you posting my freight? I'm like, sorry, man, like I'll get it to you. And so that's like when Craig asked me about it yesterday, there's just this false sense of like the importance of the load board. Like no carrier wakes up in the morning and goes to a load board first. They go to Robinson's website first. That's the number one place a small carrier goes to look for freight. And then they go to their 5 favorite brokers. And every good broker knows that they call their regs. That's what we call them, right? Like you get your little spiral notebook out because you don't want to put them in the system because you don't want somebody to steal your carrier, right? So you get your little spiral notebook out and you call your regs. And so the reality is most brokered freight doesn't move from a public post.
Yeah. Yeah. The best loads are not on the load board. Like, and that's how it's all, I mean, as long as I did it, that's how it worked. Perhaps that's changed a little bit, or maybe that's what you're hinting at. But it is, I mean, I'm just curious how, in light of everything you just said, Caney, how you guys have thought about rolling out how you thought about the structure of your new TFX product, right? Like how are you trying to incentivize that sort of behavior in this new product you guys are rolling out?
Thank you for asking. It's a slower, more methodical roll. So it's not like, hey, let's just open the floodgates, because one of the things that we have to think about, the way that we think about the world, is we think of it like an aperture. Like what carriers can see which loads, because it's not meant to be everybody come here and just look at each other. There's rules about what you can and can't access. And sometimes the logic just, you're a developer, Reed, like how do you can over engineer it and then it gets buggy. And so there's a lot, but it's also like changing the expectation of a customer, because their product experience has been what it has been for 10 or 15 years. And it's a very different product experience. Did you ever, is there I can't kind of think, it's like when Salesforce Classic went to Salesforce Lightning. I don't know if you did. Okay. Remember how different it was? Did you go through that, Reed?
Yes.
Like it's kind of like that. Like everything's just different. And what's interesting is like old school, like Coyote and backhauler guys love it. But it's newer brokers that have just never had the discipline of building a carrier base that have a difficult time getting their mind around it.
So in a way, like the laziness or maybe the fact that they're not trained well enough is causing a lot of this cargo theft.
100%.
Because we've seen an increase, and it's interesting because like over the last 3 years since Highway's been around, we've seen an increase in like all the freight fraud, right? Like there's like 3 years ago was better than it is now.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's also like to Reed's point, he was saying like, it's a slower market. So you think that these brokers are just building better relationships with people, but it seems like that's not happening. And like, so where does it go from here? Like what needs to actually happen for like next year for us to talk and be like, hey, it's actually getting better?
I think, so one of the things I will say is for our customers, it actually is getting better. Like when we look at the data, like there's a lot of anecdotes like around a couple of carriers' point of view or a journalist's point of view because of some things they heard. But when we look at the data of things that are reported to us by our customers, for our customers, the what are we, 1,300 now, Demi, something like that?
Yep.
It's actually all going in the right direction. So what that means is we've pushed them other places. And so what you're seeing is lots of reports, they're just going where it's not secure. So there's places where it's more obvious. But I do think, to answer your question in a better way, I think the thing that will need to change in a year, and this is where we're trying to do a better job with our customer success teams and with Demi's team, is this has to become a culture in a broker. If you look at Andy Smith at Circle Logistics, talk about him all the time. This is a cultural thing at Circle, right? If you look at the people that Demi talked to that do this the best, it is not someone's second or third job. It is a person who owns this culturally. They are on the phone with Demi. They are catching updates on what the new vectors are, what they need to be watching for. Demi's getting on the phone and training their teams versus somebody that wants any type of fraud product to be a set it and forget it. That's the key difference, Paul. Does that make sense? It's like, what are you going to do to make this a cultural thing within your company? I sat with a customer last night, and they had a person make a decision outside of the process that resulted in a theft. And so they brought up a customer to me, and they said, "Well, how does so and so do it?" And I said, "Well," I didn't mention the president's name. I said he would have fired them on the spot, and it would have been a public spectacle because it's just not accepted at that brokerage. And so my question was, do they still work for you? And he's like, "Well, yeah." I'm like, "Okay, well, you don't take it serious enough."
It's interesting. I mean, I'm wondering if like the bad actors, and I feel like it's probably not right to lump them all into the same category because they probably all kind of do things slightly differently. But like, I'm just curious, do you think that they like first and foremost look for companies to exploit that are not your customers?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I think they do both. I think that it kind of goes both ways. And when they are looking at our customers in particular, I think that you see when they don't have success there, if it's a good, bad actor, they're going to try to get data. This is why, like, I'm sure if I have brokers on this call that I have, restricted access to Highway from for sharing alert details and insight details, like, I'm sorry, but I think that that's how they figure it out. I think that a broker, when they don't just want to tell a carrier no, and they want to give them something to say, hey, this is not us saying no, this is these platforms saying no, like, let me just give you all the data that we have. What they're doing unknowingly is just giving a bad actor, somebody that they don't want to work with because they've detected fraud, they're actually giving them ammo for the gun they're trying to use, and it's like, don't give them that. And I think that that's how we see it shift with our customers in particular outside of highway. I think that, they can go, they go and they find out where they can target those brokers in particular, and how they can get into their networks. And just from what we see on our side, I think that they're always trying to evolve in what they learn and what they can bypass.
This podcast is also brought to you by Highway, the carrier identity platform that's revolutionizing how freight brokers fight fraud. Every day, new threats emerge, but with Highway's robust tools, you're always one step ahead. Last month alone, Highway stopped over 54,000 fraud attempts, solidifying its role as a trusted partner to over 600 3PLs. Highway stands as your shield against the threat of stolen identities, double brokering, data breaches, and more, ensuring that your operations are secure and your transactions are safe. So, if you want to focus on what you do best and leave the worries of fraud behind, it's time to partner with Highway. Visit highway.com now to book a demo. Highway. It all starts with carrier identity.
The one thing that kind of gets at me about the whole fraud discussion and kind of the industry's kind of obsession with it. The obsession is not the right word. Obviously, there's a good reason to care about it. But just like the focus on it is, it would be better if we could spend the time focusing on all of the good folks out there, all the good carriers who are just trying to run like a legitimate business. You know what I mean? But for whatever reason, or because it's such a big problem, we have to spend a lot of our time and a lot of our energy and a lot of our words talking about all the bad actors, right? So I'm just curious, obviously the end result of you guys, of your product and the existence of your company and everything you guys do is a better environment for all the good actors out there too, right? Specifically, I guess with your new TFX product, what do you think? How would you frame the benefit to legitimate carriers for using it? What's in it for them to be on there?
Yeah, there's a couple things, and you're right. It's one of the things that gets me to Reed, because I never get to talk about our capacity products. People only want to talk to me about fraud.
Yeah, right.
Whole suite of capacity products that this is what they do. So our search algorithms, they're designed to show the broker the best carrier, based on insurance, based on connectivity, right? Based on tracking, there's all of these things we know about great carriers that show up in a search result. Right. If you just use the product, and that's exactly like TFX is just an evolution of those things. It's just an evolution. So why is that good for a carrier? One, it's free. We don't charge carriers for it. And because a carrier plays by the rules in TFX, they actually get more access to what they can do in their profile to manage their own digital hygiene and the way that they look and their equipment and their connectivity and their users. They actually get a little more freedom to manage things that we can't give to the outside world because it would be too vulnerable. So it's like think about out here is, it's a little bit of the Wild West. And then when you get in the exchange, you now have the comfort that you've got two, like Demi turned off 5 brokers last week. The point is it cuts both ways, Reed. I think I was looking at the Slack this morning. It was 5 brokers. Demi was these brokers I think are fraudulent. Don't sell them highway. Don't let them in. Cut them off. So we have people showing up trying to pay us a whole bunch of money and represent themselves as a broker, and we have to do a ton of diligence on just our own customer pipeline now, right? And so when you show up in the exchange, what Triumph is interested in doing is paying that carrier instantaneously when they deliver, right? Because the problem is carrier liquidity. So if you're a carrier, sometimes you're getting a rate confirmation and you don't know if it's a real load. You don't know if you've been redirected. Right? If you call and load, you don't know if it's a can get. You don't know if you're talking to a robot. Weren't you the one telling me, Reed, that that you were hearing from carriers that it was problematic? It's with the AI is growing so fast. Who was telling me that story at the conference this week? Somebody was telling me that story that carriers are now concerned that they can't even talk to somebody about a load to get the right information.
Yeah, I don't think it was me, but I know what you're getting at. Yeah, I mean, I think I try to put myself in the carrier's mindset sometimes, and I just think through how would I feel about just the state the state of the industry from my perspective. And I think a lot of carriers have kind of a sour view on technology in general, just because, and a lot of drivers do too, even if they're not like the company owner or an owner op or anything, and because a lot of the tech has just been, from their perspective, like restrictive, right? Like in-cab cameras, speed limiters, electronic logging devices, like, and we could sit here and talk about all the reasons why those exist and all the good things they do for companies and for drivers, yada, yada. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of them still, right or wrong, still think technology equals bad, right? And so from my perspective, I'm always just like, okay, like in light of that, how do you as a technology provider shift that and get folks to reframe, oh, these hoops I'm having to jump through to work with this broker, the highway hoop I'm having to jump through to work with them is actually there for really good reasons, and it's providing me security that I need to be able to not be exposed to the BS that's out there in the world. And then, I mean, it's really, I mean, I don't know what you do other than just like say it over and over and over again for years, and just proof is in the pudding, and the tide turns long term. But I'm just curious how you guys like, because I'm sure there's carriers out there who say bad things about highway or have negative opinion. You can't not.
Well, there's a ton. They're in the chat right now. We're closing businesses. But I mean, the thing is, those are felt things that are real. And so Demi and I talk about this a lot when we get stuff in our inbox. Like, man, there's no data to support this emotion, but this is a real emotion. How do we help this person?
Yeah.
And you can't go out and say, hey, there's actually no data to support your claim. Like, you had one bad experience. Maybe we didn't get to your call fast enough. I'm really sorry. I promise I'm going to answer your question directly. But like, Paul sent me a thing the other day. It was like, hey, can we help this guy out? And it was the exact same message that he'd sent to 20 people on highway. He'd sent it to me, sent it to Demi. And this guy's a crook who's uploaded fake documents, fake cab cards, fake licenses. And he's out like with a really like good looking LinkedIn profile, trying to get everyone to reach out to highway on his behalf and claim that he's legitimate. So like, we also get that stuff all the time.
Yeah. And I answer your question directly, Michael.
Yeah. Now, sometimes like, our buddy, I'll think of it in a minute. Like, he's in Chicago. Like, he called me, what was his name? He called you, and then he called me, and I was like, dude, I know you. I used to load you, but you can't log in with the same email from, like, you got to quit doing dumb things that make you look like a criminal. Like, I realized that we changed the rules on you, but like, you look like a criminal. Quit doing these things. Like, log in with the right email addresses, like have verified users. And we worked with him for a couple of hours to clean his profile up, and it's great. And so some of it's just like, they don't understand. And that's our fault. We have grown so fast, and it's so tough to keep up communication. And honestly, sometimes like for Demi, it's secondary because she's just trying to make sure things don't get stolen, or like it's nuts, guys. And so we have to do a better job of that. But the direct answer is you have to give them a better experience. You can't tell them, because people have used technology to beat up on carriers and be invasive and not let them do their job. But you got to give them a better experience. You got to give them loads, and you got to give them paid really fast. Because if you give them a place where they can log in easy, everything's real, and they get paid really, really fast, a lot of the noise goes away.
Yeah.
And if you're a carrier, like, it's a really tough job. And look, I'm just going to say this. I've talked to a lot of drivers in my 20 years. There is a tendency in that community to look for someone to blame when things are hard.
Yeah.
And the reality is, like, you got to keep your side of the street clean, Mr. Motor Carrier. And you're not always real good at that. Now, I would also tell you what doesn't make it to Reddit are all the carriers that send Demi like gift baskets at Christmas because she saved their business because she kept their identity from getting stolen. That doesn't make it to Reddit, but they do. Those gift baskets do show up in our office.
Yeah, and and that's all, and that's a very human tendency to really only focus on the bad stuff and ignore all the good stuff. So I don't think that's unique to you guys, obviously. But I mean, it is obviously your guys' is, and I'm preaching to the choir. I don't think I need to tell you guys this, but I mean, it is definitely, it is your job to tell those stories, you know what I mean? And put that out to the world, because I think those successes and all the good things are more important than all the bad things that happen too, right? Like it's awesome to see the fraud trends and all the numbers, right? And it's good to have visibility into that data, but it's like, how can you quantify, or how do you quantify in aggregate all the good things that you guys are doing too, right? And I think, and then frame it from the perspective of the carriers too. Like, even if they're not your customers per se, right? I think they'd probably appreciate that, and that might help you guys long term, swing that narrative. But I mean, I guess I'm preaching to the choir. I'm sure you guys think about this all the time.
No, we do. We have an open role for it. If anybody wants to be director of carrier relations, apply at highway.com. I'm serious.
No, I think that that's fair. And I think that when I first started here, almost 3 years ago now, my focus was so heavily on the broker side. And I a lot. I'll be the first to tell you really candidly here, I lost sight of what our platform was in that, just learning all about fraud. And I just didn't trust anyone until I got carriers who are like, okay, this guy isn't actually lying. And now I need to do my due diligence and talking with him and developing a relationship with him, because I think that the whole purpose of our platform was for carrier identity. And I think that we're designed to protect them. And with TFX, I think it's getting them better loads, because those are the ones who are doing it right, who want to give you that transparency. And I think what you said about the ELD visibility and all these things, they feel like it's very invasive. Reality is, I'm not even going to turn away from my DoorDash order that's carrying my $7 Big Mac. I want to track it all the way there. You're carrying hundreds of thousands of dollars of freight sometimes. You have to be you are in a different time now. If you've been in trucking for 20 plus years, like Caney and everybody else, it's shifted. You're not just putting freight on somebody's truck and doing a handshake and buying them a cold one when they get back. That's not what it is anymore. They need to treat digital identity the same way that they treat their personal security of their companies. We have so many different vectors that are attacking you. What we're doing is trying to protect you. And I understand that sometimes you're getting caught in that crossfire, especially a good carrier. Yeah. A lot of those good carriers that have my cell phone number that call me and say, hey, something happened. I don't know what it was. Great. I know exactly what happened. I can tell you what happened. Let's clean it up. Let's figure out how we can move around this. And I think that I get so many of those phone calls across my desk every single day, while, risk mitigation team kind of handles the actual bad actors, but ones that kind of trickle through that and make it up, are ones that I look at directly. And I have a lot of really great people that I talk with that, something in our platform may have given them a negative experience. And that's not our intention. I think our intention is always to give you some sort of insight and visibility to protect you when you otherwise wouldn't know. I think just with FMCSA updates, IP address changes, things like that, all of that is being sent to a carrier to give them visibility into it where they otherwise wouldn't have it. And I think that that's what we see on a day-to-day basis and on a carrier level. And something that we're trying to shift our focus on, especially with TFX launching, just to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what we see as fraud and what we see as false positives.
We've had a couple of instances to talk about the good, Reed, where there have been users inside of a carrier that have been attempting to dispatch from multiple carriers without their employer knowing, because we watch the same credentials logging into multiple accounts, which you can't do in highway. You have to disclose that you're a dispatch service if you want to do that. A user has to have a one-to-one relationship with the unique DOT number. And so sometimes we've helped carriers find fraud within their own business, right? Because they're double brokering and trying to access multiple carriers or be a dispatcher sitting at a carrier. We've helped. Sometimes it's one user that maybe gets phished. The carrier's fine. They're running stuff, but we'll go, hey, I think this particular user. Demi, tell the story about that fella in Arkansas we talked to, where he's his son is the one that got phished, or so. It's a family business. It was a great story. It was a great carrier.
Yeah, no, he was a really great guy. But yeah, his son was in there trying to access from something or another, got phished. It ended up triggering an alert on him, and his company was blocked while we looked into that. And he was just full panic mode, just of, why is all my access disabled and why is this all happening? And, having a conversation with him and figuring out what truly happened. got us to the bottom of it to figure out, okay, like you gave a code to an entity that you should not have given a code to. You were sharing an account that you should not have been sharing. And it implicated you in a separate theft event that occurred on a different carrier at a different time. And it's like, we don't want you to get caught in that crossfire, but also thank God we caught that, right? Like, had we have let these people, if you get phished or you get, your inbox gets compromised or whatever the case may be, I think that you being notified of that and knowing sometimes before you even know, like somebody else is reporting that on your behalf, gives you more context and visibility into why you might be, disconnected from multiple different connections, just from what you see on a day-to-day basis. Like, we just want to give visibility into that just as much as we want to give a broker visibility into, what's going on at a broker level as well.
I'm wondering if we could, for the last 10 minutes that we have here, discuss a little bit like 2026 and the outlook. Because I do think that there's some people are talking about the fact that right now capacity is leaving, and because of some of the non-domiciled CDLs like leaving the market, companies closing down, that a bunch of MCs are going to start to be sold, on the web. And then all of a sudden, like, these criminal entities are going to start buying these MCs. I'm wondering, like, how do brokers prepare for this in 2026? Like, I mean, and obviously this is all like kind of like more or less your opinion of where things are headed. I'm kind of curious to, like, where do you see Michael and Demi, like, 2026, and what should brokers really be looking out for, and carriers as well, going into the new year?
I could probably hit my top 3. That would be shared intelligence across platforms, fraud reports, behavioral alerts, fraud indexes, access anomalies should not live in silos. I think just encouraging education at every level, on a driver level, dispatcher level, broker level, tech vendor level. We all play a part in safeguarding freight data and physical cargo. And I think my last piece to this would just be freight security is now cyber physical. If data is compromised, your freight is next. And just be vigilant in what you do in 2026. And obviously, as we see trends, like, we want to inform, just keep everyone really informed on that. I would say that that's kind of my top 3 for 2026 and what we see moving forward.
That's really good. So I think you're right. There is a what you have pointed out, Paul, is a major focus of our identity business right now. And so something that may be important for you guys to understand is because I know you get asked a lot of questions about Highway and the market to understand, is Highway has 3 business units with 3 business unit leaders now. And one is identity. And that's the business unit that Demi is aligned to. It's like, so Demi doesn't spend time working on TFX. She's worried about identity. There's a business unit leader for our load level compliance solutions. And there's a business unit leader for our capacity and TFX solutions. So a major focus of our identity business right now is in the development of solutions to detect patterns that show sold MCs, Paul. Right? Like, that's like, it's how do you figure out if the control is changing? The trucks may not change, but somehow the control of the way that carrier is moving or booking freight is changing. And what's the signal that we can tell a customer that a carrier is about to break bad? Right, something happened. And the other thing that I would say is that you've really got kind of 3 things that are impacting what we think is going to show like lots of rapid thefts. The non-domiciled license. I think Demi probably gets asked about that more times a day than she has. I mean, is that accurate, Demi? That's coming up all the time. The non-domiciled license, the fear of deportation, and the government shutdowns, and the idea, theoretical or not, that no one's watching the store at the government. Right. So you've got kind of those 3 things. And Demi and Brittany and I talked about this, that what we see is like, we're going to steal a whole bunch of freight before we either get kicked out or put out of service or taken off the road or whatever's happening. So those 3 components are actually going to drive to move faster, because they think they're going to not have a chance to either just work. I'm like, well, screw it. I'll just steal a bunch of stuff while I can. And so what do you have to do? So what we're hearing from most of our customers is, hey, Highway, how can we use your capacity solutions to begin building a carrier base? So I was critical of some folks earlier when you talked about this, but what we're seeing from the most sophisticated brokers is we actually want to start working on our supply now for when the market turns. How can we identify them? How can we be reaching out to them? How can we get them into our marketing drips? Who are they? How can we get that data? And so that's what brokers are thinking about, because what they're afraid of is that if the market turns, they're afraid of the urgency. They're afraid of the bad decision. They're afraid of the truck they have to have. Like, they don't want to go back to that. And they don't want to get beat by competitors that were more proactive than them.
Yeah, it's definitely a good time to be trying to build that network, right? Both as an individual within as a carrier rep, right? Or anyone within one of these companies, but also just in aggregate across the company. And I'm curious, how are you seeing folks doing that? And is your product really, does it lend itself to do that, to do a better job at that than maybe that you otherwise would be able to if you didn't have Highway?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. There are things that you can do with our capacity products that you can only do with our capacity products. And so, like our sophisticated users, they have saved searches that hit our API that are just constantly looking for carriers that fit a certain framework, right? Like especially for specialized type cargo, because we read the policy and look at the cargo exclusions. So a lot of our brokers hey, for my cargo that moves in this OD pair that's high theft, that has to have a certain, that's commonly excluded, they can run a search in Highway and we can tell you all the carriers capable of running that load, not just because we physically see them there, but we know the equipment, we know the trailer, we know the VIN number, we know how it's insured, and they want to target those carriers. So so if you're a good carrier, that's how you're getting more business. And so those are just saved queries that large brokers hit against our API.
Yeah, and that's one of those benefits. I was always shocked at how difficult it was to get just basic information out of a carrier about what they do and what kind of equipment they have and where their trucks actually are available, in real time. And I always was just man, if only there was a way for carriers to just share all this information so that folks could find them easier. Obviously that's half the battle is just that information being readily available. So it's cool that you have it, but then it's really on the broker to figure out, okay, great. These are my target carriers who run this OD pair and have this type of equipment. But now I need to go and build trust with them and get them to know me and build the relationship. Right. I'm just curious how you really actually productize that activity. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Look, we have 60 seconds left, but I should do a demo for you. You should come by the office. We'll show you how you do it, how we do it.
Yeah.
But I remember when I worked at a broker that we moved a lot of cans and you had to have plate trailers. And the only way to find out if a carrier had plate trailers was to call them. If you want to know who has plate trailers, I can tell you. That carrier gets more business. That group of carriers is really happy because if you have plate trailers and you're hauling empty cans, that's really good freight because it's got to be there just in time. So somebody's not dumping beer. The good carriers know this freight. They buy that equipment for a reason. And so it's good brokers and good carriers. They know this. They know that this is how the world should work. But the good news is you don't have to call a carrier and ask them if they have a plate trailer. I'll just tell you.
Real quick, if possible, there's a question from Kyle that I think would be worth answering right now. At one point in time, the vast majority of the fraudulent carriers were utilizing the same insurance providers or similar types of insurance providers. Is this still a key indicator, or are they started to become variable in their approach to securing insurance?
I think we see both. But what I would say is we've mitigated a lot of that insurance fraud because brokers are choosing who they want to work with and who they don't want to work with. And I think whenever a broker flags a provider as many times as they do, and we see that in such a high volume in our network, carriers know when to shift and where to move. And those insurance companies pop up just like sold MCs pop up, just like fraudulent actors pop up. I think that we see it move. But in terms of where it moves to, we're always comparing that data on an insurance level as well. So it's a little bit more apparent in our system where they're moving. So for insurance fraud and opening, insurance with different producers, is a key indicator, but not something that we see as high risk anymore because we've mitigated a lot of that just by comparing the data that we have on insurance producers in general. Yep.
That's one of those things that was easy. I wish we could go back to that. That's one of those easy,
know,
like one of those things
days.
that was an easy one, like when it came out. And I wish we could go back to that. It's like when I wish we could go back to when double
Daisy
broken was
days.
the problem.
That was the worst
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Well, Demi and Michael, thank you for joining us today. Everyone that's listening, on Monday, Highway is dropping their Q3 2025 Freight Fraud Trends report. So make sure to check that out. And also congratulations to Highway for being number one on FreightWave's Freight Tech 2026, right? Or 2025? Which year would?
I think it's 2025. Is it still 2025?
Okay, they did it for 2025. Got it.
No. It's the 2026 list.
Okay.
I don't know why they do that, but that's what it is.
I mean, it makes sense.
Really? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I'm confused. We got an award.
Well, it's like when like the new sports games come out on like Xbox and PlayStation. It's like in the
We
fall
should
time,
honestly
you get
do
the
this.
next year.
We should do this more often because I think you guys have you have a lot to say, right?
Yeah.
And there's
We'll
a
do
lot of
one
interesting
next
stuff.
quarter.
There's a lot of interesting stuff here. I think we should do this regularly.
Yeah, and honestly, Reed, I think we need to do a better job of just like explaining how some of these things work.
Yeah.
Like, dear freight broker, if you see a white identity alert on a carrier, it's not bad on the carrier. We're telling you the carrier was a victim. Stop holding it against the carrier. If it's white, we're just letting you know that there's an email out there impersonating the carrier. Stop being mean to the carrier. Carrier didn't do anything wrong. Like that. I still have some customers that they just think everything's bad. Okay, not everything is bad. Like, you guys got to read. So like there's things that we could do a better job of, and if you guys could help us do that, that'd be amazing.
Of course.
Let's get on it, baby.
Let's do it.
All
And
right.
also,
Well, thanks, guys.
Reed, shout out to Truck Parking
See.
Club for getting 24.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Demi and Michael, once again, thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thanks.
See you guys.